what's right? We don't know. Well, we kind of do know, but there's some thinking that has to happen. I mean, what makes you the most nervous about buying a house? Is it the negotiating? Is it the worrying that you're going to purchase a house and there's something wrong? Well, let me put you at ease, okay? Every house has something wrong with it. Something that's deteriorating, something that needs a little tweaking, something that needs complete repair. Any of the above can happen on any house. Let's talk about how we resolve that with the seller when you're going to buy a house. Coming up right now. Okay, this subject makes everybody really nervous, especially first-time buyers who didn't even think that the house that they just fell in deep like with has a little something wrong with it. Like maybe some mildew, maybe some dry rot, maybe even a little termite thing going on. I mean, it's as common as the cold, all right? There's hardly a house on the planet that hasn't been a little bit disintegrated by just existing on the earth. Even brand new houses, I highly recommend that people do a home inspection on, because all that lumber has been sitting somewhere and it too has been shrinking, expanding, getting dry, then drying out, and all these things. So even though lumber is treated and all that, things go wrong and things need to be inspected, and sometimes contractors miss something. I know I just heard a story from a friend of mine who was so grateful and thankful that her new clients who just bought a new house did a home inspection on their brand new house. And they bought it, it was already built, they didn't do a custom home, but they bought a newly built home. And it turns out that some part of the plumbing, like the sewage pipe, was never connected. I mean, they forgot to connect like the house pipe that goes to the street, or something like that. I forget her whole story, but I was like, wow, that could happen, I guess. So even when you buy a new home, you want to have a home inspection. It's super important because you want to know everything about this house you're going to buy. So we've done the inspections on the house, and you now have a pest inspection and a home inspection at a minimum. You may have a roof inspection as well. But what we're trying to do at this point is get an idea of what you're about to purchase and what we might be able to get back from the seller in compensation because some things are broken. So there's several ways to go about it, but I'm just kind of gonna make it kind of plain vanilla so your brain doesn't explode, okay? Because there's a lot of ways that these things are solved. We do all the negotiating on paper. There's a document called the RR, the Request for Repair. So after we study the pest inspection and the home inspection, we come to a conclusion. The pest inspection actually has estimates on it, and it comes in two parts. It'll say section 1 has $2,000 of dry rot, and section 2 are just maybe little noted things that are looking like they need repair, but they're not broken, all right? But something in section 1 is actually considered broken, like dry rot in the eaves of the house, okay? Or serious water damage. It needs to be solved before you buy the house, all right? Yes, pest inspectors look for water damage, all right? So you also look at your home inspection, and that's a big 40-page report with pictures that have arrows and descriptions, and you will have walked around that house with your home inspector, and he's going to show you everything he found. A lot of them actually sit there with their iPad and show you all their pictures too, so you have a good idea. Maybe he points out 3 things that that they're kind of broken, they're not working, or they're broken. One thing we don't do in negotiating is we don't negotiate on things that aren't broken. So if that home inspection shows that the air conditioner is kind of old, getting towards the end of life, let's say, we can't go back to the seller and go, I want $15,000 off the price of the house because that thing's old. If it's still working when we buy it, then it's still working. So that's kind of thought number one that I think is important for people to know when we're getting into the negotiating process. So we go through our reports, and a lot of times the pest inspection and the home inspection talk about the same subjects. And the pest inspector will find the dry rot in the eaves, and the home inspector will also. They'll note it in each separate report. They both come from different companies, generally speaking, a lot of times. And so it kind of backs up the fact that there's a broken window in the back, there's dry rot in the eaves, and there's a little water intrusion under the kitchen sink area. So we have a drip there, right? And also maybe he saw some tiles that were kind of lifted on the roof. And we brought in a roof inspector that was like, yeah, this roof isn't that old, but that probably should be repaired because that could cause a leak. So now we have some information, right? And we also have some information about the seller. Maybe they already moved. Maybe it was somebody else's house, like a parent's house or something, and they're selling it and they don't really have a budget to repair these things. Maybe they don't even have $5,000 or $4,000 to repair it. They've done as much as they can. They left the house in great shape, but they're not planning on doing this. Now, just because I heard from their seller's agent that they're not planning on doing the repairs doesn't mean we can't ask for some money. So the way we do it is we request the repairs. So we write on the RR that we're requesting, let's make it up, $3,000 in a credit to the buyer. And that's all we write on there. We don't have to justify why. Now they will see the reports because you back up your RR as a realtor with the reports so they can see why we made our decision. We don't make it a mystery, okay? So they see that and they agree to the RR. Now I can also include the CR, which is the contingency removal form. And if you'll recall, you accepted the seller accepting your offer contingent upon you feeling like you were cool with the house, like the repairs are going to get done or you get maybe some credit in the end. You're going through this decision-making process, right? So we can give them both of these at the same time or one at a time, depending on a lot of different variables that come into this moment. So I oftentimes will send the RR with the CR, and they'll okay our request for a credit for you for this money. And they will also sign the CR and lift the contingencies, okay, for the physical inspection, which means this subject is wrapped up. We're not talking about it anymore. They've agreed to give you a little bit of money towards your closing cost, which is how that works. They don't hand you a check for the damages. That goes to the title company, and the title company credits you a little bit at the end of the transaction. So that's kind of how that's settled. Now, there's a few other variables. They don't deviate from that much, but I think that's the easiest way to talk about the RR and the CR and what we can ask from the seller. And I'd like to touch on that subject a little bit more. All right, so I wanted to really be clear about what exactly is reasonable to ask the seller. Now, reasonable is my favorite word when it comes to the contingency removal paperwork and our requests that we're making of the seller, all right? Because things that are unreasonable might make them go, I'm not selling my house to you. Okay, so we do want to make it a win-win. We do want to be reasonable. And the first part of reasonable is what's broken. Is it broken, like it doesn't work, it doesn't function, or it's in pretty bad shape, it's going to cause a leak or a safety hazard? That needs to be talked about. So when we're doing this, that is what we're thinking mostly when we're putting in our request for repair. All right, and it's just super important to remember that and to know that, because we want to come out with something in the end. Now, let's say you put an RR in and they send back, don't laugh, the next document called the RRRR, which is their response to the request for repair, all right? They could send that back with their conclusion to what they're actually going to offer you. So instead of giving you the $3,000 you requested, they give you $2,500. And are you going to walk away from your dream home because they didn't give you the whole nut? Or are you going to go, wow, we got something from this? You see, reasonable is reasonable. And so that's kind of the conversation and how it flows. And it's up to the realtors, the seller's realtor and the buyer's realtor, to really wiggle through and strategize this process. Especially me, if I'm representing you as the buyer, I want to get you something, but I can't be unreasonable and over demanding because they might just say no. And then what are you going to do? You still want the house, you know you're going to buy it, but now you don't get a little credit because we weren't nice, we weren't reasonable. So keep the reasonable thing in mind when it comes to this subject, and also the fact that maybe you ask for $3,000 in credit or $5,000 or more and they chisel a little off. It's okay. I can tell you that the pest reports are generally very overestimated. And so a lot of times you can get handymen in for a lot of the work. You don't need to hire general contractors, except of course if it's a general contractor kind of thing, we need it to be up to building code or something like that. But if it's handyman work, there's the leak under the sink and things like that, you know you can do the work for a lot less. And if you're a handyman yourself, then you know that maybe you're going to be doing all the repairs yourself and you're just grateful they gave you back $3,000, or whoops, the 25 instead of the 3. You see what I'm saying? It's like reasonable to think it out rather than being more demanding. So that's the heat of the battle right there. This is the moment when a lot of sellers, they don't know that it's coming. So when I sit with you as a first-time buyer especially, and even my buyers that haven't purchased a home in 5, 10, 20 years, I remind them of this moment, of what we're doing after the seller accepts your offer and you open escrow and we're in our 17-day period. This is the moment we're coming down to. What's wrong with the house? You understand what you're purchasing, and are there things we're going to request from the seller to compensate you for that are broken? And they either need to fix them, or hopefully they don't have to, but hopefully give you a little bit of credit towards closing so you can get those repairs done. And I'd much rather have you do the repairs than the seller who's done with repairing and spending their money. Maybe they've moved on, like I said earlier, that might not even be their house and they're trying to just sell it. So, or if they're out of state and they've like moved a long ways away, they're never interested in calling up their handyman and, you know, figuring out a way for him to get in the house and make repairs. It just doesn't happen like that. I'm sure it's happened, but it's not a regular thing. So that's kind of the whole scenario. Do you have any questions about anything? Call me, write me, make comments in the comment section below. I'd love to see them. Reasonable, right? That's what matters, is being reasonable when you're negotiating, because nothing feels better than taking over someone's home, buying their home, knowing that you all won in the end, that you got something, that they walked away with what they wanted, and the whole spirit of the whole transaction is really, really cool. That's the best way to buy a house. I'd love to know what you think. Leave me some comments in the comment section and check out my description section below, because that's where I have links to that free seller's guide that you might want. Maybe you're thinking of selling, and my free buyer's guide and relocation guide. I have all kinds of free ebooks down there. Print them up and use them as your tools when you're wiggling through the home buying process. I'm also an affiliate with Homes for Heroes, so I give you a great big nice check when you finish buying or selling a house. If you're a first responder, or active or retired military, or one of our great teachers, a police officer, sheriff, firefighter, check out that link below. It's a nice check, and after you move into a house or you just sold a house, it's great to be able to have a little bit of money to buy a new sofa or a new refrigerator or maybe outdoor furniture or a great barbecue. It's going to be a nice check. So check out Homes for Heroes below. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button right there and that little bell, and you'll get all my future videos. This is Anita with Keller Williams Real Estate here in Sonoma County, California, and Discover Sonoma County Living, and I hope to see you around the neighborhood.